Howdy, it's Kyle with a video where I ask some controversial and perhaps inappropriate questions that I've been curious about for years. I've had this video topic idea for several years now with this channel, and I was asking myself, am I ever actually going to do this topic? And the answer is, well, apparently. So I do think the audience of this channel is mature enough and intellectual enough to handle questions like this without getting into a big flame war in the comments. So do keep the comments civil, but I do think these are some interesting things I just want to know about, and maybe some of the people that are viewers of the channel might be able to help me out with some answers. The first couple of questions I want to ask have to do with the lack of diversity in YouTube geography. And there are over 100 geography channels on YouTube of various sizes, but the vast majority of them are done by white men. So I want to ask, why is that from a gender perspective and also from a racial perspective? So I want to first talk about, or at least ask why this is the case from a gender perspective first. I studied geography at Cal State Northridge in Los Angeles, and it's a very good geography department. And while I was there, say there were maybe 80 or so students, and it was 50-50 from a gender perspective. There were, say, 20 professors in the department, 50-50 male, female. And then I went on to graduate school at the University of South Carolina, maybe 100 students in the geography department there, 50-50 male, female. If anything, maybe 55-45 female, maybe 20 professors again, half were women. And the chair of the department at both Cal State Northridge and South Carolina were women. So there is no gender disparity whatsoever in geography, but in YouTube geography, there certainly is. And geology is another field where there's a lot of overlap. And so often geography and geology students would hang out. And so we know a lot about geology students as well. And that's another field where it's pretty 50-50 male-female, but on YouTube geology, there's all kinds of female hosts who have geology channels, but for whatever reason, geography is not one where you see really any female representation, even though the field of geography itself is certainly not male-dominated. The chair of the department at South Carolina, Dr. Susan Cutter, if I were president, she'd be the FEMA director, and I know the person who's the head of the FEMA hurricane response. I mean, it's probably a mess right now, but and it's a woman as well, so there is no gender bias whatsoever in the field of geography, but for whatever reason on YouTube, it's just a bunch of dudes. Okay, from a racial perspective, there isn't a whole lot of diversity in YouTube geography as well. It's just a bunch of white folks pretty much. So I want to look back at, again, my educational history. So Cal State Northridge at the time in the 90s was the most, or one of the most ethnically diverse campuses in the country. It was just many different people from all different walks of life, many immigrants, and just a very diverse campus. Geography had maybe 80 to 100 students, and the vast majority were white. There were a few Asian students and a couple of Hispanic students, but not a single black student. And the professors were almost entirely white. There were a couple of Asian professors and a couple of Hispanic professors, but again, the rest were all white. At South Carolina, which is, I believe, 25% black student population, the South Carolina Geography Department, maybe 80 to 100 students, and not a single black student. There were a handful of Asian and maybe not even any Hispanic students, but 100 students, 95 of them were white. And in terms of the faculty, there were 20 or so, I think, one Asian and one Cherokee, and the rest were all white. So very similar with geology. It's a very white-oriented department. Meteorology, climatology, very white, and the few minorities you get tend to be a couple of Asian, a couple of Hispanic students. So my questions here are, why is that? Why is it so white dominated? Not just on YouTube, but just geography in general. In fact, I don't know of anyone who's going to school that I went who was black in either geography, geology, meteorology, climatology. So why is there seemingly a lack of interest in the earth and atmospheric sciences amongst the black community? They're just, the vast majority of black population in the U.S. lives in urban or suburban areas. There are some rural areas in the South that are predominantly black, but I would think there'd be some interest in geography and culture and just studying different things, but for whatever reason, there isn't. So it's a very white dominated field overall, not just academically. Academically, it's male, female even, but why is it all male on YouTube? I don't know. So YouTube, it's a big Aryan sausage fest, but geography academically is even gender. And so why are there so few women YouTube in geography, and why are there so few minorities at all in the earth and atmospheric sciences? The next few questions have to do with what I feel are the unfriendliest parts of the U.S. I've been fortunate enough to have driven cross country on road trips many times since 1998, probably at least once or twice a year, every single year. Driven through each of the 48 contiguous states multiple times, except Washington, just one time only. But in all the years of traveling, whatever part of the country I'm in, I've been treated pretty well, whether I'm in a big city or a suburb, small town, middle of absolute nowhere. But there is one part of the country that is noticeably, at least for me, significantly unfriendlier, and that is the interior Northwest. So I'm going to talk about, or just ask, why is that? I'm specifically talking about parts of Idaho, Wyoming, and also Utah and Oregon as well. So whenever I've driven across country, whether it be Maine or Florida, Michigan, Texas, California, Nebraska, Mississippi, West Virginia, I mean, it doesn't matter. You go anywhere else in the U.S., if I drive up somewhere in the middle of nowhere and I'm just going into a convenience store to maybe get a soda and use the bathroom or something, you walk in there, here's the response everywhere else in the country. Hey, howdy, hey, what's going on? And hey, how's it going? So you go get soda, whatever, and you get up to the counter and the person's like, hey, that's an interesting license plate. What is that? Tennessee. Oh, Tennessee. I've been there. I went down there with my wife, my husband, my cousin, whatever. We went to the Memphis, Beale Street. We went to the whatever bowl game in Nashville. So yeah, it's cool. What are you doing here? Oh, I'm driving cross country. This is a beautiful part of this country. I like it. I like Nebraska, Louisiana, wherever I happen to be. Oh, that's cool. Enjoy the rest of your time here later. Okay, what happens when you go into a store in rural Wyoming, rural Idaho, just coming off the road? You walk in there, it's just dead silence. I mean, it's like tumbleweed. You can't even, not even tumbleweed. So you go up there. I remember multiple times I've been to a convenience store in Wyoming, and you just kind of go up there and you buy a soda, and not a single word is exchanged. So the person is sitting there, mm, mm, mm. And that's the interaction. There's never like, oh, where are you from? What's that? That's a weird license plate. Oh, South Carolina. That's pretty cool. You never get that kind of interaction with people for the most part. I mean, in rural areas in that part of the country. So I think Idaho and Wyoming are the only two states where the largest cities are the friendliest areas. So, and I asked my wife just randomly out of the blue, is there any part of the country you felt is the unfriendliest based on all of the road trips we've been on? And she was like, I would say probably Idaho and that southeast Oregon area. So, and southeast Oregon, close to the Idaho border, is another part of the country kind of like this. And this is where there was a story where we were followed, basically tailgated out of town by a local cop, kind of like the beginning of the first Rambo movie. That's basically what happened to us there. Multiple times have been into restaurants in this part of the country, walked in and just been ghosted by the servers. One time in Wyoming, I was sent into a secondary room. The lights weren't even fully on. They never came to serve me or even, take my order. It was just kind of, but every time I have a story like that, it's always in rural Idaho, Wyoming, or maybe Utah or Southeast Oregon. So why is that? So I've had a hypothesis over this for years, and this where it might get a little bit controversial and might ruffle a few feathers, but I've found that in areas, in towns where it's predominantly LDS, or areas that are not really all that terribly friendly to outsiders. So essentially these are towns where it's mostly Mormon towns. So these are small towns in largely southeastern Idaho as you get kind of close to Yellowstone National Park. Not on I-15, but once you get off kind of the roads. Again, southeast Oregon, really any part of Utah, but we've mainly been in the touristy parts of Utah where people are generally friendlier. But when you get off to some of the roads in some of these funky parts of Idaho and Wyoming, it's not smiling faces, a lot of suspicion, a lot of why are you here, a lot of get your gas and get the hell out of here. And again, anywhere else in the country, it's not like that. You can just go one state over to Montana and people are generally friendly there. Dakotas, Nebraska, all in that same part of the country, people are friendly there. Big city folks, California, Florida, Texas, New York, people are friendly, but I don't know why that is in the rural parts of the interior Northwest, especially where it's largely LDS. Again, I'm not trying to be flaming here, but so if you know why this might be, why some of these parts of the country are so unwelcoming, so unfriendly to people that might just be visiting, and I'm not talking about the Moab or Park City or Sun Valley or places where you do see a decent number of tourists, like right around Yellowstone, but just kind of the areas that don't see tourists. And I've always kind of had a problem with that we don't want outsiders mentality in this part of the country, because There was nobody here 120 years ago. These were states that didn't even become states until the early 20th century or the late 19th century. The people that have been there for maybe 4 generations. I mean, can you imagine going to Massachusetts or Maryland or South Carolina or New Mexico and being like, my family is entitled to this land. We've been here for 4 generations. And somebody from Boston might be like, 4, oh my God, 4 generations. You deserve this land all to yourself, but whatever. So you do get that kind of mentality in this interior rural Northwest. So why is that? And to go along with that, I talked about how people have generally treated me nicely wherever I've gone throughout the country, but I also look like this. So I'd be curious to know if people of color have traveled throughout the country, some of these small rural areas, and have been treated nicely or have been treated rudely or whatnot. Or maybe you're just kind of a weird looking white dude. You're the white dude with the dreadlocks and the funky clothes on, but I want to know if people treat everyone like that nationwide, or just because I'm a normal looking white dude, people are nice to me. But my experiences are going to be different than others. So I just would love to know if some of these places I always talk about are being friendly, if they're only friendly because of this. I like to think that's not the case, but I also don't know for sure. So let me know in the comments. Okay, and this next one is probably the most controversial question I'll ask, and I'm not going to use this one for clickbait in the title. So if you're still watching, I can trust you're a little more mature about a question like this. And it is, why is it when the economy is bad, humans, we always blame immigrants? The people that always get the blame when things are going bad, it's always them. It's never us. I mean, it's always a case of, well, I didn't do it. It's not me. It's not you. It's not us. It's them. They did that. No, it's them. Why is that? So you're seeing right now all across the developed world, US, Canada, UK, EU, Japan, South Korea, Australia, New Zealand, there's a massive backlash of immigrants. Immigrants are always the ones that get the blame. I think it's largely going to be psychology, because it's easy to kick people that can't fight back, and it's more difficult to push people that can push back and have money and power and what that. So I think a lot of it is psychology, but just from a more geography standpoint, why though? And you think about right now, so many countries are electing anti-immigrant leaders, and most recently Japan. I'm thinking, Japan is the last country on earth that should be electing anti-immigrant leaders. They've lost 30% of their population this century, just since 2000. They're in a downward spiral. The last thing they need is to close their borders, but that's what they're doing. South Korea is kind of in the same boat. There's a really interesting video by Kyrgyzstan called South Korea is Dead. And it's not clickbait, it's legit. South Korea and Japan are both in the downward spiral, and I don't know if they can get out. So what do? Blame the immigrants, the last people that are the one causing the downward spiral. But you see this worldwide, Germany, France, it's the Turks, it's the Muslims. In Sweden, it's them, it's the dark-skinned people, it's always them. It's never, we're not having kids, we need people to do these jobs. I don't know. So I just have a problem with that, blaming the weakest, the people that are least likely to fight back. So is it a case of just the psychology of that, just kick them when they're down? I think it's mostly going to be that psychology. But again, from a geography standpoint, we need immigrants. I mean, if without immigrants, and most states are losing population. I mean, California and Texas are states that need immigrants to grow. Florida's growing. I mean, that's where the growth is, just with people coming here, because I don't have kids. Most people my age, I'm in my mid-40s, we don't have kids. Most people my age don't have kids either. So anyway, so that's the thing I see right now with developing or developed countries that are all stagnant population or losing population, being anti-immigrant. So it's like the fire of downward spiral population. So we're going to throw another log on it by being so anti-immigrant. I don't get it. And it's not just me being some kind of like, I love multiculturalism. I do. I like hearing different languages and just different types of stuff like that. But from a more practical standpoint, we need immigration. Japan does too. But I mean, they're in that downward spiral. Something has to happen. But that's them. That's up for them to decide. But generally speaking, why do you think that is? Is it just psychology? Is there more to it than that? But because humanity, Homo sapiens, when something's wrong, it's their fault. Okay, so I better end this video before it turns into a complete dumpster fire, but I do think these are pretty fair questions to ask, even though they might be considered controversial or inappropriate. But again, with the viewers of this channel, I do trust that the responses will be professional and civil. But yeah, if you enjoy this type of stuff, give me a thumbs up to let me know you approve, and subscribe to this channel if you're interested in learning more about geography. Normally I'm doing more academic type stuff. If you're a viewer of this channel, this isn't my normal stuff, but give me a thumbs up anyway. But yeah, thanks for watching. Geography King signing out. I'd like to give a special thanks to my Superior patrons for their support. If you're interested in becoming a Superior patron or perhaps an Erie or Huron patron, check out my Patreon page. The link is in the description. As always, thank you very much.